Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and in today's video we're doing an amplifier and subwoofer in this 2024 Volkswagen GTI or Golf. Now in this install we're going to show you how to integrate this amp and sub to the existing factory audio sound system. Let's get started. This video is sponsored by Alpha Epoxy, your professional epoxy coating service provider, installing quality coatings for home, garage, and commercial spaces. They did a fantastic job for my new shop, and they can do the same for you. Located in Salt Lake City, Utah, give them a call to schedule your quote today. Alright, so here at the bench, the parts that we're using in today's install, first and foremost, is the amplifier and subwoofer being installed. We're going with this kicker loaded enclosure. It's a single 12 with a passive radiator, so it actually has a really great bass output here. It's about a 500 watt RMS sub at 2 ohm wired. So to pair that correctly, we're going to go with this Stinger amplifier that does about 500 watts at 2 ohms. Now to wire this amplifier to the vehicle, we need a wiring kit. We're going with this OFC 4-gauge amplifier wiring kit by Scar Audio. And it comes with just about everything that we need to wire in that amp. Now, because we have the factory radio, we need some sort of integration line-out converter that'll convert that factory audio sound to a signal that our amplifier can read. So we're going to go with this Audio Control LC1i. If you want any sort of bass correction, you want the LC2i Pro. That'll have bass roll-off correction, so we can link that version in the description if you choose. So what we're going to do at this point, we're going to grab their amp out of the box, we're going to pull our wiring kit apart. So let's go ahead and do so and show you how we're going to build our amplifier rack. As you prepare to install your amplifier, there's a couple of places you can put it. Now underneath the driver's side front seat is common times where we've put amplifiers there. Past generations of this vehicle had a factory amp at that location, but they've now moved that. Our GTI actually does have the Harman Kardon factory audio sound system, so there is an OEM subwoofer in the spare tire area in the trunk. Now, if you didn't have that factory subwoofer, that generally indicates that you don't have an OEM amplifier, and instead you're going to have to tap into the harness back behind the radio or pull apart a B-pillar to tap into the rear speaker signal. Because we have the Harman Kardon system, we need to get our signal from the OEM subwoofer. Here in the cargo area, we pull up the false floor, and here is our factory subwoofer. Now our OEM sub, it's a dual voice coil factory sub, which is indicated because there's 4 wires. There's 2 sets of speaker wires feeding this subwoofer. So we're going to tap our 2 inputs, our left and our right, to the 2 sets of speaker wires on this factory subwoofer. We're actually going to put our amplifier and line-out converter probably in this spot and build an amp panel to accommodate that there in that location. Alright, so here at the bench, we've spent some time off camera just assembling an amp rack or a panel here. This is the main amplifier here, and your amplifier needs a power and a ground, which we have indicated by this red and black heat shrink. Our blue run here, this is going to go all the way to the battery. Now, your amplifier wiring kit comes with a fuse and fuse holder. This needs to go as close to the battery as possible to protect that run of wire. Now that center pole here is our remote input. That basically indicates or tells our amplifier when to turn on when that factory audio sound system does. A couple of ways to get that. You can find an accessory source, or your line-out converter, which we'll talk about here in a moment, can generate that turn on for you, so you don't have to look for that source in another location. Our speaker wire outputs, this is a mono amplifier, but Stinger provides the convenience of multiple connections in case you have multiple sets of speakers that you want to connect to this mono amp. Since our preloaded subwoofer enclosure by Kicker only has 1 set of terminals, we only need 1 set of speaker leads, and these are 16-gauge OFC runs that'll run up to that box right above it. On this side of the amplifier, we have RCA inputs. There is an output to bridge out to another set of amplifiers if needed. We don't need that. So our set of inputs, it needs a signal so it knows what to play, and this is where a line-out converter comes into play. And then the other connection is a bass knob cable, which we've run down, which will run up front for the convenience of adjusting that level on the fly. Next here, let's go ahead and talk about our line-out converter. Now this is essentially taking that factory signal, putting an output signal that our amplifier can read. Our Stinger amp doesn't have any sort of high level input, so we need some sort of line out converter to convert that signal for us. It has an input and an output and some power connections. Now the input here is where we'll feed the factory OEM signal. These, in our case, are going to tap to those 4 speaker wires that go to the factory subwoofer in the center of the spare tire. If you didn't have a factory amplifier, you don't have the Harman Kardon audio sound system, you'd run something like this into a T-harness all the way up to back behind the radio, and we can link that information in the description. So that'll feed signal from the factory system into this line out converter, and then it outputs this low level signal all the way to the inputs of the amplifier. This little guy here is also going to turn on our new Stinger amplifier. Once it detects audio or a DC offset over the factory speaker wiring, it'll actually turn everything on for us, so we don't have to hunt around the vehicle for an accessory source. And this blue wire, we've just loomed it, goes all the way to the remote input of our amplifier. Now to make that actually happen, it also needs a power and a ground here, and we're just robbing power and ground off the terminals of our amplifier. You kind of see that there, just snaked them up underneath. So those are all our connections on our amplifier rack here. It's mounted on this 1/8" sheet of ABS plastic. This is a 12 by 12 that we've kind of cut down. At this time, let's grab our amplifier rack, let's take it to the car to start getting everything installed. We'll tack it on this side so it's still serviceable. In case we have a flat, we don't want our amplifier rack in the way of the spare tire. So we're gonna run our power wire, pull it all the way to the battery. We'll find a ground here in this cargo area. Our speaker wire output simply goes on top to feed our subwoofer box. Then our 2 input speaker wires, we're gonna run all the way to our harness at the subwoofer itself. And our bass knob cable will run up to the steering column area, where we can flush mount that for an OEM finish. Okay, so we went ahead and got everything all basically placed where we want it there. We pulled out the false floor just so we can make our connections here. For our input signal, there's a little lip that you can run your wiring up underneath. We came around here, zip tied to the existing wiring, and we're gonna connect into our OEM sub. We have 4 wires, 2 speaker leads to connect into the 4 wires of the OEM subwoofer. We'll show you what's positive and negative. Generally, we solder into these connections here, but you could use some T-tabs if needed. Now our power, our ground, and our bass knob, we're going to go up underneath the seat there. We'll show you where that comes out. Our sub wire comes up here. Once we get the false floor in, then we'll cut this to length. But that's more or less where everything's going to be mounted. Now we went ahead and pulled this apart. It's easier in this generation. You don't have to pull out the child seat anchor points anymore, as those are now integrated to the seat itself. The seat also just has 2 spots here. All you have to do is pull up on the front. They literally come and unsnap here. Now, you are probably equipped with the seatbelt monitoring system that you just have to disconnect there, but that comes easily and out of the way. That just gives us a little bit of space to pull our power and ground wire from the amplifier rack, and we pulled it down here. Now this is just held in with some clips here, so we pulled this out of the way so we can start running this forward. Now our power wire and our bass knob wire, we're going to run that forward. Our ground here, we're going to tap and make our own ground in this location here. This area is really sturdy with the vehicle, so we're going to go ahead and clean the paint and tap our own 10mm ground here, and then continue running our wire forward. Okay, so we got our ground all in there, bare paint, which is great. 10mm ground there. Now we can run our other cables forward. We're going to continue popping panels off here, working our way towards the firewall area. All right, so we popped this off here, as you saw. We continued running our wire, zip tying it to the factory loom. Now this can be a little bit tricky to get off. This handle is usually on this panel right here, and on the inside, if you get a screwdriver, what you're trying to do is get this little release out. Pull that out with the screwdriver. This pops on out, and it's gonna have a little flathead screw there. And essentially, when that's out of the way, this whole panel lifts out. It's really nice, gives you access here. Now, because we have the automatic version instead of the manual, we have a nice big grommet up underneath. We'll show you here in a moment. Up underneath here is our factory grommet. Now we haven't fully seated the grommet yet. We wanted to show you. We can pop that out. We pierce through it to run our power wire. Now, if you have the manual version, it's okay. Volkswagen has provided a nice flat area you can easily pierce through to pull your wire like we usually do on the channel. And you can pull your wire. This is meant for additional accessories. You can almost push your finger through it. It's so soft, and that goes right through alongside the rubber grommet to the right of it. And same exact thing, you can pull your wire on through. We went ahead and seated the grommet there. We can put this all back. Just grabbed our power wire out. We fished it up here. Now we did a fuse holder mount this way. The sandwich is under this plate, some leftover ABS, and so it's nice and sturdy there. Do not screw into the battery here. This is purely mounted to the piece of plastic and not the battery itself. And with that sandwich done, we added wire ferrules like we usually do, split loomed it, and it goes all the way to the positive post here on the battery. Finally, in this generation, there is a positive post accessible to us for accessories versus going to the tightening stud. We finally have this option here available to us. And this will conveniently be covered by the little cover provided by the battery itself. So when we made our connection there, we removed the negative off the battery until all our connections were made. Once they were done, we could put the positive on, put the negative back on, and at this point, we're done under the hood. So let's go ahead and tap into the factory subwoofer. We're using these wire strippers to strip back the shielding. Then we're going to use a pick tool here and actually make a little hole through it. This is kind of like a military splice. Then we're going to feed our wire through the hole in the OEM harness, wrap our wire around it, and then what we'll do is grab our soldering iron and solder onto that connection. All right, so we went ahead and connected our two sets of inputs to our factory sub wires. Now, it's being a dual voice coil, there's two sets of speaker leads to the single sub. We tapped into both coils. Now, positives are your whites and negatives are your browns. One coil is white and brown, the other coil is white with a yellow stripe and brown with yellow stripe. What we did, as you saw there, is we just pulled back the shielding and soldered on there. Now we'll insulate those connections with a little bit of electrical tape and relume the harness like factory. Then we're gonna put some split loom on the rest of it here. Then we can get this plugged in. Got everything tested taped up here, just like factory, so that doesn't chafe on the tire. We went ahead and set our gains. The radio clips, there's no numbers on the radio, and so it clips about 80%. We have it set to about 2 o'clock on the dial there, right before it maximized, and then that allow us to keep our gains nice and low, so it's about 9 o'clock on our gains. So we got all that set and good to go. Don't use bass boost on your amplifier, there's no need for it. It just adds unnecessary distortion. And basically at this point we got everything all tuned and ready to go. We can go ahead and put in the false floor and finish up this install. Went in and got everything all back together here. It's looking great. Up underneath, got everything all reassembled here, and this is where we added our bass knob. Now behind here is our factory fuse box, and the bass knob that's included with the Stinger amplifier is mountable, flush mountable, so that's where we put a small hole, and basically that our bundle of wire and everything is back behind this panel. It's just held in with clips. Went in, got the sub box all in. It fits great, actually. Fits right in there, and overall there's a ton of bass with this setup. Now, if you like any of the parts that we used in today's install, we'll link them down in the description for you at your convenience. And if you have any questions on what we did here, go ahead and post a comment below. This thing bumps, we love it. If you like it, be sure to hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to post great content on the channel all the time. We'll see you in the next video.